So we have no follow-up for this one. 0 action items from AI Snake Oil.
That's appropriate.
Yeah. I feel like we should put something in this beginning section before we just jump into the book, but I don't know what it is.
I don't know if I do either. So let me ask you this question. Are there... we'll revisit this, Mike. Have you been enticed by any fiction books lately?
Oh, come on.
The other one I
not.
could ask is, how is your Nintendo Switch playing going?
That's not great either.
Okay.
That's okay.
I'm failing all over the place, folks.
No, that's okay. We are recording this one in person.
Yeah.
So right behind you, Cory, is the case for my my OLED Steam Deck, but the Steam Deck is not in there. Joshua has confiscated it.
I see.
He's been getting into, I think it's the Guardians of the Galaxy game. Steam had some big summer sale, and I bought a couple games. And I haven't been able to play that one much. But I did get into another video game though.
Okay.
It's on the Xbox. So there's a Game Pass, and they just added a whole bunch of games to Game Pass. One of them is the new Indiana Jones. What is it called? Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, I think. It's like an adventure style game, but you're Indiana Jones. And it's made by a company called Bethesda, which is the company that did like the Elder Scrolls, like Skyrim, basically. That's the game I really got into. So imagine like an Indiana Jones themed Skyrim. That's basically what this is. They've got, I think it sounds like Harrison Ford doing all the voice acting for the main character and stuff. It's pretty cool.
I could get into that one. I could burn some hours on that one. Yeah, that one sounds fun. Yeah. Especially if it's like adventures. Like, are you doing challenges or is it open world? Like, what are you...
Well, it's an adventure game, so there's a story.
There's a story.
The beginning of it is kind of cool because it's a flashback to Raiders of the Lost Ark. So it's teaching you the controls as you're going into the temple to grab the statue and put the bag of sand on there.
Very cool.
And then you wake up and you're in this, you're in the college, and you're talking to one of your colleagues. And then after that, that's when the real exciting stuff happens. Somebody breaks in, steals a statue. You got to fly to I don't want to give any spoilers. You fly to the Vatican, and the whole premise of the game is like the Pope is dying, Mussolini and the fascists are coming in and taking over.
Very Indiana Jones. Yeah. Yes, very Indiana Jones. I would get into that game. And what platform is it for?
So it's on Game Pass. I know they have it on Steam. I'm not sure what all platforms it's available for, but I've been playing it on the Xbox upstairs a little bit. But I haven't had a whole lot of time for that. I've been trying to crank out more YouTube videos. I don't know if you, I don't think I talked to you about this. I have started publishing a YouTube short a day.
Oh, you have not talked to me about this at all. So
see, if I had more time to plan this episode, that's probably what I would have led with. But yeah, I was on a call, like a live call for Ecamm with Doc Rock, and he made a comment about trying to stick with shorts. And he's like, Mike Schmitz is here. He's got to do this too. And I'm like, okay, Doc, fine, I'll do it. And then I've been doing it every day, and it seems like it's working pretty well. My views obviously are way up, not the watch time because they're shorts. But what I love about the shorts is that I can take clips from my actual videos and I can point them to the longer videos. Okay. So then it's just actually formatting those in a way that they're interesting for people with shorts. I'm not sure if you know anything about shorts, but like standard, like good metrics are like 70% engagement. So 70% of the people who come across it will actually watch it. Okay. And I started off at like 30, 40%, then it was 50 and 60. I had one that hit 70 not too long ago. So I'm starting to get it.
Help me understand, how long is a short on YouTube? Like
it's less than 3 minutes.
Just less than 3 minutes. That's right.
But I think the ideal length is probably around 30 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm experimenting with a whole bunch of stuff, but yeah, it's cool. I'm using Opus Pro to get like the beginning part. What I love about Opus, I'll actually do a live stream about this at some point, is you can take what they give you, because it's like an AI thing. Here's the viral part of your video, you can add as a short, and it's never very good, but it's a starting point. And then you can change the formatting and add little, I want this sentence to be inserted here. Just in the transcript, you can highlight a sentence and be like, I want that part of the big video at this point in the clip. So you can make something that is pretty decent pretty quick.
And that's through Opus Pro. You
Yep.
take that big video and it'll suggest what the short should be.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's cool. Like,
yeah.
that
But
would
then
be...
what they give you is never what you should actually post, in my opinion, at least not with my educational type videos. But it's a starting point. You know, if I were to just start with the video and be like, oh, I got to find a spot for making a clip, I would never do it. But when it gives me 10 options, you know, now I cranked out 30 shorts last Saturday in like 4 to 5 hours.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's great. I just listened to another couple podcasters, and they also make YouTube videos. But did you ever hear of No Dumb Questions or
I've heard of that?
10 Minute Bible Hour? So Destin Salen and Matt Whitman, they were talking on No Dumb Questions about the how do I say this? The growing up of YouTube and how how it started, and then the next couple phase and the next phase. And it's funny because they actually talked about a Mr. Beast phase, right? Like there was the Mr. Beast phase where it was basically gamifying everything, right? You're trying to gamify everything about the algorithm, and it really turned me off to YouTube. I was like, oh, it just feels so gross. Like everything about it feels so gross. But then I don't say that in terms of I don't still go there to find good content. I just think about like making videos and like trying to play that game, and like how much of a barrier there is between what I want to produce for people and what, you know, them actually watching it or it going viral or whatever. And I'm just like, oh, I don't want to play that game at all. Like that sounds so terrible.
That's fair. I mean, you don't have to play it the way that Mr. Beast plays it.
Yeah, valid. Yeah.
But yeah, you got to find the balance there. The TLDR, I think, is if you make good stuff, YouTube is incentivized to help your content get in front of the people who actually want to see it, which I think is pretty cool. But it is algorithmic, so you got to figure out what do they want to see.
Well, they were talking about like A/B testing thumbnails and like doing that before they posted the video. And I was like, I don't even know how that, like, how would you even do that? Like, how would you even test your thumbnail for engagement prior to posting the video? But maybe I just heard him wrong. Like there's a really good chance I heard him wrong and I wasn't understanding.
Well, I think you probably could do that. You could do like an unlisted video, so you could like send your email list to it or something and A/B test it that way, and then make it public to everybody once you get some data. But yeah, I'm not doing that. They do make it easy to upload multiple thumbnails, so I'll typically do that and let the.
Well, and then you just run them for a week. Run each one for a week. Is that how you would do it?
No, it will actually A/B test them for you. And
will
then
it
just
really?
Pick the one that performs the best. Yeah, you can You can put up to three thumbnails. So yeah.
Wow, I didn't realize that system was that. I mean, advanced, if you will. That it'll run those tests for you. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, YouTube is a thing.
It's a thing. It's a thing. Well, keep making good content, man. Keep making good content.
I will try. All right, let's talk about today's book, which is From Strength to Strength by Arthur Brooks. And I have to call out, because you showed it to me, that you read this one as a physical book. So how was it?
I did read this as a physical book. And Mike, here's what I'm going to tell you. I liked the reading experience so much better as a physical book. I really did. I liked the reading experience as a physical book. The problem I have is now I have this stack of notes because the way I take notes, I can't get out a digital device while I'm reading the physical book. It just feels so wrong and I don't like it.
I get that.
I don't like anything about it. And then this morning I was going through and thinking about like, okay, I need to compress these down and make my like show notes. That way I can talk about this elegantly. And I got so tired of it. I'm just taking pictures of them. So in my note app, I have pictures of my notes. At some point here, you and I are going to talk about my new scheme that I've found that works for my note taking.
Okay.
And I've told you this before. It uses liquid text.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about my note taking scheme because that's hands down, without a doubt, the best. Throw a PDF into liquid text. I do my highlights. I do my notes. When we're doing the show, I can scroll right through that. The thing I haven't figured out about that is the archiving. Yeah. But what I will tell you is that the physical paper book was much more pleasant to read. I enjoyed it much better than I did reading it on a digital platform.
Nice. Have you ever tried doing like the personal index in a physical book?
I haven't, no.
So that's kind of where you jot down things in the margins, and then in the back you put, page number, whatever, just like a word or two about what you captured in the actual page itself.
No, I've never tried to do that, so I don't know how that feels wrong to me. I can tell you right now, like I'm
does.
thinking about it and it just feels
It
wrong.
feels weird to write in a physical book. I think it's fine, conceptually,
Yeah.
but I can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. You're mind map through and through, right?
Yep.
Yeah, you're
Yep.
mind map through and through.
Exactly. All right. So, From Strength to Strength by Arthur Brooks is really about navigating a midlife crisis. Is that a fair summary?
Well, I'm actually glad, foreshadowing, he gets to the phrase midlife crisis towards the end of the book, towards the latter part of the book.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad he did, because I was like, man, why are you not talking about the word midlife crisis? Right? Like, what took you so long to get to midlife crisis?
Yeah.
But it's kind of like that. I think it's a little more nuanced, which we'll get into, but it's kind of like that.
Yeah. The subtitle is Finding Success, Happiness, and Deep Purpose in the Second Half of Life. So, I think that midlife transitions, anyways, is the right right summary.
Yep.
There are 9 different chapters, an introduction, and a conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
The chapters do not break apart into any sort of section, so I think we'll tackle these one by one.
Good.
And not all chapters are formatted the same. Some are significantly longer than others.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
Which is a little bit strange, to be honest. But 220 pages, so not crazy long. And some really impressive blurbs on the back of this one.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure if you saw those, but we've got Simon Sinek, we've got Daniel Pink, Dan Harris, Angela Duckworth, Eric Schmidt from Google, and Bishop Robert Barron, founder of Word on Fire Catholic Ministries, who at one point sent me a Word on Fire Bible for free. I think they thought I was the Father Mike Schmitz from YouTube.
Yes. I have found Father Mike Schmitz a long, long time ago when I looked up Mike Schmitz, and I was like, that is not the Mike Schmitz I know.
That's how I explain people who are like, oh, you have a YouTube channel? I'm like, yeah, Mike Schmitz, not the buff Catholic priest.
That's a great way. One of the things, if you're picking this book up to read it, the intro and the conclusion are very, very short. I mean, they're 2 or 3 pages. I don't know exactly, but they're very, very short. So the bulk of the meat is in chapters 1 through 9.
Yep. So let's start with that introduction. The introduction is really a story about at one point he was on a plane. I don't remember where he was going, but he overheard someone in the row behind him. It was a man who was sounding very despondent and like, my life isn't worth living anymore. And a woman who he presumed to be the man's wife trying to encourage him. And then as he got off the plane, he looked back and he saw that it was somebody super famous that he knew.
Yep.
And famous enough to the point where when they got to the front, the pilots were wanting to shake his hand and tell him, what an impact he had on their life. And it kind of juxtaposed this, he was very depressed and despondent just minutes ago in his seat. And now, because he's being recognized for something that he had done earlier in his life, he seems much happier. And so this guy on the plane, he literally told his wife that he thought he would be better off dead. And that's sort of the premise for the book, is why do these strivers, he calls them, suffer so much when they can't continue to do the thing that they did that made them famous and helped them accumulate all this stuff. And he talks about the striver's curse, which is people who strive to be excellent at what they do, finding their inevitable decline terrifying. I don't think I've had enough success to be absolutely terrified by this. However, reading this introduction, it did get me thinking about it a little bit. And I'm like, man, I am actually much closer to that point than I feel comfortable with. So it definitely is a little bit unsettling. And then he uses that as kind of like a jumping off point, though it doesn't have to be that way. You can make the inevitable change a source of strength, and that's kind of where the actual title comes from.
Yeah, I have a question for you first before we get too deep into it. Who do you think the person was? And
I have no idea. I was trying to figure it out.
What do you think their context was? Like, do you think they had a certain profession? I do. I have an idea of, if I had to guess, but what do you
I have no idea.
Okay.
I was trying to think about that, and I don't even know where to start.
I have to think it was somebody either in the military or in politics. Like, I really think it was like, because the pilots, like they would have had to known this figure, right? And pilots, I mean, they're going to know people probably in the military. Like that's my, my thought. And then kind of everybody knows people in politics. So it's like,
Sure.
but it's like if it was like some obscure like CEO of something, but maybe not. I mean, I don't know, but I have to think that's what it is, and that's what it's in my head. But he says at the end of the book that he's not going to tell. Like he's never going to tell who the person
go
was.
to the grave, not revealing this person's name.
The other thing that I think is important as you get started with the book is, I don't want to say the book is autobiographical, but he is part of this story a lot. Like as he unpacks different ideas and thoughts, he's very much going to refer to himself and his experience in this. And I liked that about the book. Like I thought it was a good addition to the book. Like sometimes you do that and it feels strange. It's like, oh, well, your story doesn't really add in here. I feel like you're forcing your story into here. That is very different here. It was like, you're very clear where he's writing this book from is, I was on this plane, this thing happened, it had a dramatic impact on my life, and it got me researching, and that research turned into this book, essentially, is what it is. Yep. So I think it's a really interesting way, just real quick for folks who may not know who Arthur Brooks is. I didn't know much about him before we started, but he basically ran a policy think tank in DC, was super successful, and then went back to school, got his doctorate, and became a social science researcher. And now he writes books. He writes kind of like public-facing research books, but he also does academic work as well. So he's got a really kind of interesting career as a social science researcher and as a former, kind of bigwig in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I had not been familiar with Arthur Brooks previously. I actually was confusing him initially with David Brooks.
Yep.
Who wrote the excellent The Second Mountain. It's on the bookshelf back there. One of my my favorite books. And he actually mentions David Brooks at one point in the book and calls out that they are friends but not related.
Not related. Yep. I like that too. Yeah, I like that too. All right. I don't really have much else from the introduction. I mean, it was a good story. It set the stage well, but that's really all I have for that.
All right. Well, let's go into the first chapter then, which is Your Professional Decline is Coming Much Sooner Than You Think.
Yep.
And this is where he starts to share some of the research around high skill professions. And the general summary is that decline sets in sometime between late 30s and early 50s. And then he kind of breaks down different professions, like professional athletes. That one's kind of obvious, and that one is a little bit earlier. The one that I jotted down for the mind map is that for writers, the average decline is from 40 to 55, so a little bit later, but still kind of earlier than I anticipated for people who write for a living.
He would say the same thing about science, that people who do like scientific research or make scientific advancements, it's later as well.
Yeah, that still feels generally kind of early, though, I guess, is my big takeaway. And it kind of makes sense when he explains it. He does talk about how the prefrontal cortex degrades in middle age. And I love that neuroscience stuff. So I jotted down a couple of things from that research which are interesting to me. The rapid analysis and the creative innovation, those suffer some specific once easy tasks become hard. I have to admit that when I read that one, I started replaying, the last several weeks and months in my head is like, oh boy, which one of these things, would I have just crushed it several years ago, but now it's hard for me. You're more easily distracted and your recall of names and facts can suffer. So this is coming basically, and we're kind of genetically wired to deny the fact that it's going to happen. I remember reading a book a long, long time ago. I forget the name of the book, but it talked about the statistics behind like texting and driving and how people think that it's, if you were to ask them in general, texting and driving, oh yeah, it's super dangerous. But then when they do it, it's not as dangerous. And it's something like 90% is like, oh yeah, it's dangerous. And then when I do it, it's like 50% thought it was dangerous. It's like significant difference. And that's kind of what this reminded me of is, we think we're able to outmaneuver this stuff and we're really not.
He brings up a couple of different points here in terms of success, and you see where he's going with this late in later chapters, but he talks about how the bigger accomplishments you have, often the bigger the letdowns you have, that if you chase power and achievement, then you tend to be unhappier in retirement. I really think this is an interesting idea, and I think part of it, the reason why I think it's such an interesting idea, is because you can see this in so many people. Like they've been successful in whatever. I don't really think it matters what you gauge success as. I mean, like whether it's successful as I don't know how to explain it, like a normal person, or whether it's
Sure.
successful as like a celebrity, or whether it's successful as like a big CEO or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
You see this curve, right? Where you see they were really successful, and then all of a sudden, like there's just this slope down of be it energy, be it productivity, be it achievement. And he ends the chapter by saying you have 3 doors to walk through. And I love the way he describes them. He says you can deny and rage, right? Like, so your frustration, your disappointment just overtake you and you can deny and rage. You can shrug and give in and just be like, okay, I'm just going to accept it and go get over it. Or what he's going to pitch in this book is the third route. You can build new skills and strengths, and you can overcome the fact that you're going to have that inevitable decline. So I just really like the way he presents this. I mean, I feel this too. You talked about, are you feeling it, or in different areas, or whatever? Like, without a doubt, like I feel this in terms of, if I think about writing research grants when I was 27, in my grad school days, and doing that kind of thing, I just have way less interest now. I had way more interest then to like go get that grant and go do that thing and whatever it is. And it's like, now I still want to do good work, but like I'm not trying to compete with everybody out there because I need to put that check in the list of like, I got that thing. I really got that. I just don't feel it anymore. I don't know why, but I don't. Like, it's just kind of naturally gone away. So
Interesting. I never really thought about it from the perspective of not interested in that anymore, but I guess that makes sense. It's like, why am I not interested in it? Maybe just because it's not worth the hassle. The juice is no longer worth the squeeze.
Yep. That, and I think that there's a little bit of like, I see the way the game is played. I am just not willing to play that game anymore. Like, I don't want to play. I don't even want to get into the sandbox and play around anymore. I'm kind of done with it.
All right. Well, you ready to go on to the next chapter?
I am. Yeah.
Okay. So the second chapter here is the second curve, and this is really, how do you respond to that? You mentioned the different doors that you can walk through. But the interesting thing to me about this is that inevitable decline is not all negative. The first thing I jotted down here was that as people get older, they almost never become less articulate. So you may not be as quick as you once were. Your critical thinking ability you may not have the same mental horsepower as you once did. However, that doesn't mean that what you do has to decrease in quality necessarily. So this is where like I'm getting personal and thinking about what this looks like for me. I don't have the energy maybe to crank out all the videos as fast as I once did. However, I do have the ability to communicate more effectively, at least potentially. Mm-hmm. Just because I'm not as quick on my feet as I used to be doesn't mean that what I make has to be bad or even, of lesser quality. So with age, there are some benefits. People usually get better at combining and utilizing complex ideas. That kind of gets into like the whole personal knowledge management thing for me. So I guess, I'm going to stay there for a while.
Yeah.
Since that's how I was going to say beat this thing, but it's not really beat it. Like, you can't really beat it, but sets you up for success, I think.
Let me add a thing there. He actually says in here, don't try to bend the curve.
Yeah.
Move to the other curve, right? So when you say about like beating it, he's basically, he is sold out and committed on the fact that first curve that we talked about in chapter 1, it's going to happen. You're not going to beat it. You're not going to defeat it. Yep. You're not going to bend it. Like, there are exceptions to the rule, but he said most people are going to go through that. Don't try to fight it.
Yep.
There's a better way is essentially what he's going after.
Yeah. And at the heart of that really is these two different kinds of intelligence. So fluid intelligence is the ability to reason, think flexibly, and solve novel problems. That's the one that degrades with age. But then there's crystallized intelligence, the ability to use a stock of knowledge learned in the past. So one of my mantras, I guess. Keep going, keep growing.
Mhm.
If I literally keep doing that, I'm creating more crystallized intelligence that I can use beneficially in what I do, and it will theoretically allow me to do what I do longer and at a higher level. So yeah, this is, the first chapter punches you in the gut. The second one is like, okay, so it's not all bad news.
Yeah.
Talks about Cicero's beliefs about older age, about how old age should be dedicated to service, not goofing off, that our greatest gift later in life is wisdom, and our natural ability at this point is to counsel, so advising and teaching others. I really like that. That's actually exciting to me. I would love to do more coaching and stuff like that. And yeah, so it's really not I have to stop doing what I'm doing, but what I'm doing maybe has to change in how I express it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, that would make sense. One of the things I like about the fluid intelligence, crystallized intelligence, is the kind of the sub descriptor he gives for them. Fluid intelligence being raw smarts,
Mm-hmm.
and then crystallized intelligence being wisdom. And I just really like that breakdown of those two, because it seems so reasonable in life that, you're an entrepreneur, and there's the raw smart side, and then there's the making wise decisions as a business leader side. And from all of the entrepreneurship training that I've done, and or helping people think about entrepreneurship, helping engineers think about entrepreneurship, there's a big difference between the young and hungry and then the seasoned veteran. And
Yeah.
like, that's why companies they'll have the young and hungry until the technology gets developed. And then they go, okay, the board's like, okay, we need to bring in somebody to actually run the company now, because hey, young and hungry, you just don't have the wisdom to
Yeah.
run this well.
Yeah.
And so it checks out. What he's saying here checks out in quite a few different ways. I like his story of Bach, where Bach was the innovator, the new composer. He was doing, his style, and then all of a sudden it changed. And I'm sure it wasn't all of a sudden, but over the course of a couple of years it changed. And then his son, which I had no idea, his son came up, and his son kind of took over and overtook his dad, and was kind of like more popular than his dad at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Which then he says Bach made that transition to counselor, mentor, advisor, teacher, still teaching in his own style. So he didn't abandon what he was good at. He just kind of said, like, okay, I have a new role. My new role is to teach people the style that I'm really good at. And then now we look back, and Bach is huge. And I had never heard of the other individual, which I don't even remember what his name was, but CPE was the abbreviation. I don't remember what his full name was.
I don't remember.
But I just think that's really like a really good example of how someone did this well, or how it appeared that someone did this well. I like that he pitches hard, or he says hard, get ready to jump. You're going to need to jump from this fluid IQ into this crystallized IQ, and get ready for it. It's coming. Get ready for it. So overall, we're 2 chapters in, and I'm jiving with what he's talking about for sure.
Nice. So the third chapter is Kick Your Success Addiction. And this talks about objectification and workaholism. So objectification is reducing someone to 1 or 2 enviable characteristics. And he makes the point, which I thought was really good, that we understand how this is bad when applied to other people, but we do it to ourselves all the time. And I'm definitely guilty of that. Also tells the story of the lady who was really struggling with this stuff, and she actually told him, maybe I would prefer to be special more than I would prefer to be happy. So he equates that to like the drug and substance abuse addict, which then leads into the whole idea of workaholism. Now, workaholism he defines as the compulsion or the uncontrollable need to work incessantly. And I have to admit, when I read that, I was like, oh, I'm not a workaholic. Like, yeah, I'm thinking about work a lot, and I am having to put in more time than I normally would just because I'm trying to get my business off the ground. I'm totally not a workaholic. And then he gives you 3 questions that therapists generally use to diagnose workaholism. Do you usually spend your discretionary time in work activities? And maybe we just answer these on the fly. It sounds like maybe this hit you too.
Not currently, but
Okay.
this was me in college. Hands down, 100%. I was like,
Okay.
yep, this is me.
Well, it's definitely me. Do you usually think about work when not working?
I still do that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think actually this one is less of a yes than the previous one for me because I guess I'm doing enough other things. Like I'm not thinking about work when I'm coaching soccer. I'm able to be in the moment when I'm doing that sort of stuff. But if there's space, I'm thinking about work.
Mhm.
And then do you work well beyond what is required of you? That's hard for me to answer because I feel like I haven't cracked the nut yet. So you could argue that I haven't been putting in enough effort, but you could also say, you could also follow me around for the week and be like, dude, you are putting in too much work.
Yeah.
I work most Saturdays, and I never used to do that. So
Yeah, this one for me is much more of a no, only because I've had to put really tight boundaries on this.
sure.
Right? Like, would I do this? Absolutely. Like, there's a really good feeling that I have, like waking up at 6 in the morning or whatever, working by 7, and just powering through until 9 o'clock. And you take a couple breaks here and there, but there's a good feeling about that day to me, except for the fact that I've ignored everyone else in my life, and I've probably not eaten well, and I've probably forgotten to drink water, and I sat all day. So it's like there's all these other areas where I've just completely tanked the rest of my life. But there is something about me that I would want to do that. So I have to be really careful of this. And my wife would agree, because she at one point in college was like, hey, listen, this isn't going to work unless you like actually give some more time into this and stop worrying about all these other. And I was like, okay, noted. Like valid. So I've actually had to work hard on this over the years.
So you're a recovering workaholic?
I would say yes. And I just like to do fun stuff and like produce things. So it's just really fun. I think that's really fun. But I also understand where there is a negative driver of that.
Yeah.
So this is one of the things we've talked about, at different times. I think one of the reasons why I don't like social media is because of how quickly I get sucked into how many people like it, how many people clicked it, how many people watch it. Like, why am I not getting the response that I want and, heaven forbid, dare I say, deserve for like this cool thing that I made? And it's like, hold on, buddy. Like, you don't deserve anything, right? Like,
Yep.
Yeah, okay, it might have been a fine idea, but you don't need, and then I run into the problem of I watch other people doing it and I'm like, well, my stuff was better than that, and they're getting 10,000 clicks, and so I have to be really, really careful of that. And that's why I'll sometimes keep an intentional arm's length away from social media, because if not, I get sucked into that really, really hard.
Yeah, I can see that. For the most part, I do a decent job resisting that, but there are times, like even today, I published a YouTube video a little bit before you came, so I'm checking to see, is it popping off? Or is this another one of those 10 out of 10 videos? It's like, oh, those ones hurt.
Yeah. Yep. What did you think of the objectification talk, right? Where he's basically saying pride and fear drive that, and then we make ourselves our work, our looks, our success, our products, our awards, whatever it might be.
Yep.
Did you resonate with that at all?
Well, yes and no. So we're going to get real for a minute.
Okay.
I've been struggling with this because the business still isn't to the point where I want it to be. And Rachel's picked up some part-time stuff because she can as a photographer, and not being the sole breadwinner for my family is really hard.
Okay.
And it's kind of like is not connected to how much effort I put into it. There's not a direct connection between the hours that I work and the money that we make.
Yeah.
So the solution is not to just work harder. And I feel like I've kind of done everything that I can do, and it's still not where I want it to be. So that's real hard. And I go through periods where like it's hard to get out of bed in the morning. It's like, oh, here we go again. Another day in paradise, to the point where I've been thinking about going and seeing a counselor, therapist, just to help me through this sort of stuff. Cause I know like this isn't unique to me, that a lot of people who are in my position, like they struggle with this stuff. And I've talked to a few people recently who have actually been really helpful with that. But so my objectification really is, I guess, I got to come to grips with the fact is I view myself as the breadwinner.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if I don't have that, what am I?
Yeah, I get that.
And Rachel's great, and she reminds me of all of the good things I do. But in the moment, I feel like a total schmuck.
Yeah.
And I forget about the fact that, I do the one-on-ones with my kids, and I'm involved with the soccer practice and doing all these other things. It's just like, dude, you're a loser. You can't even provide for your family.
Oh man, I'm sorry. Like that's tough. Thank you for sharing. Like that's awesome that you're willing to share that openly. I can tell you that is not true. Like that is 100% what he's talking about is you're objectifying. Exactly. You're doing the self-objectification thing.
So that's why I share it, by the way, because like it's hard for me to talk about that stuff, and I kind of don't want to, talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
But I have experience where, I've shared this with certain people, and they're like, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
like I was feeling the same thing, but they would never go first and say it, So hopefully that helps some people.
And I think that is feelings like that. I think they're common if you care. Right? If you care about the work that you do and like you want to do good work, like they're more common than they are not, right? Like I mean, I find I have a hard time finding people who are good at what they do and are walking out like, well, I just don't care. Like I just walk in and it's like, no, I care a lot about what I do. So no, that's awesome. So thanks for sharing that. He talks about using humility to lighten the load, essentially taking the spotlight off of ourselves, right? And understanding that it's not all about us or about our accomplishments or our achievements. And boy, oh boy, do I have to remember that. Like it's like the world is bigger than me, and unfortunately or fortunately or however you want to think about it, like if I would die tomorrow, the world will keep going, right? Like like everybody will do okay. And I know that's a really dramatic example of the world keep going, but it's the truth. I mean, so having that humility, having that there's something bigger and it's something bigger than me, which for those of you who are thinking about reading this book, we're going to get to it at the very end, but like he is very, very clearly there's something bigger in the world than Arthur Brooks. Like he is very, very clearly, and you read it throughout his writing and he talks around it. Sometimes he talks directly towards it, but there is definitely, a higher power that's associated with, he calls it the divine later, but there's definitely that higher power. He describes himself as Roman Catholic, I think. Am I right, Mike?
Yeah.
Mike. So he describes himself as Roman Catholic. So just keep that in mind if you're reading this book. He definitely comes from that worldview, and I think humility is tied to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of Roman Catholic, can we talk about Thomas Aquinas?
He references Thomas Aquinas a lot.
Yes, that's in the next chapter, chapter 4. Start chipping away. So the title of this chapter really is in reference to the way that Eastern culture versus Western culture views art. In the East, art is already there waiting to be released, versus in the West, it's a blank canvas that needs something to be added to it. And I get this conceptually, but I admit that I tend to think of the blank canvas more than the carving that needs to be released inside of the piece of marble or whatever. But this is where he talks about Thomas Aquinas, who came from a wealthy noble family. He was supposed to enter the church, but he wanted to join the Dominican order, which I don't know a lot about the Dominican order, but it sounds like that was an order who they took an oath of poverty or something, and they were pretty poor. So his family was not a fan of that. In fact, his family, they disagreed so much that they kidnapped him from the Dominicans at one point.
I thought that was wild. Yeah. For like a year, right?
Yes.
I mean, a long time.
Yes, they held him hostage for over a year. And when they realized that they couldn't break his resolve, they tried to break his faith. And at one point, it said that his brothers tried to seduce him with a prostitute, and he chased her away with a fireplace poker.
Yep. It's a wild story.
It is.
It's absolutely a wild story. And I've heard a lot about Thomas Aquinas.
Yep.
And I've heard a lot of people talk about how good his writings are, and that you got to read Thomas Aquinas. You got to read Thomas Aquinas. And I don't think I've ever been as sold as this description right here,
Yeah, I know.
where he's like, listen, we're going to get rid of all idolatry. And when I say all idolatry, I mean all idolatry. Yep. And it's like, it makes me want to read some of his works more than anybody ever suggesting them to me.
Yeah, and he has his list of substitutes that people have for God. And this is kind of the point that Arthur Brooks makes, is that these don't necessarily need to be substitutes for God. These could be idols just in context of what he's talking about with life transitions and going on to the second curve: money, power, pleasure, and honor. And he has this game that he talked about he played called What's My Idol? Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm, I do. Yeah.
Which essentially is just putting these in order of like which one is the most important to you. I'm curious, did you perchance do that?
I didn't do it fully, but I thought about it and I was like, man, that would be a valuable thing to do.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So I don't have an action item associated with that, but I think if I were to do it live, my top one would probably be honor. And these are, not necessarily bad things. Honor of the things that are on this list feels like the one tied to helping other people and the whole idea behind the life theme.
Well, if you remember that he said that when Aquinas is talking about honor, he's actually talking about fame.
Sure.
So that's the way he's using the word honor in this situation.
But I feel like that's the thing that would allow me to impact more people.
Yeah,
so if I'm going to, really address it as he's laying them out here, then I guess that would be my big one. But yeah.
I think, so what were they? They were money,
power, pleasure, and honor.
Money, power, pleasure, and honor. I would say right now mine's probably power, right? Not in like I want to rule over other people, but it's like I want to do more leadership. Like I want to be in more of a position of power to make decisions and to affect change.
You want to be the guy.
Well, but I actually think it's leaning in more of like a negative way. Like it's actually messing with my brain, and I'm not as effective as I should be on the day to day because I think that I need to be in this powerful position in order to do that. So
sure,
I think that's a problem with my thinking right now that I need to adjust.
Interesting. Well, I don't think it's necessarily a problem. That's the thing. These idols, I look at this list and I feel like these are maybe not pleasure. I guess you could kind of deconstruct that one a little bit, but they feel like you could use these for good or evil.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like a tool. It doesn't have any moral value. It's really, how are you trying to use it? So it's a little bit weird to be like, yeah, this is my idol, because that feels like a negative thing.
Yeah.
But I think that's the whole point of the exercise, is to identify the thing that could be used in a negative way in your life.
Yeah.
So I also like the way that he redefines satisfaction at the end of this. So he's got a couple different formulas. Satisfaction, the first version, continually getting what you want. Success is continually having more than others, and failing is having less. So then at the end, he talks about the new definition of satisfaction is what you have divided by what you want.
Mm-hmm.
That makes a lot of sense.
It does. It really does. I like the concept that he brings in for the getting what we want in this hedonic treadmill, that where we're constantly on this treadmill for pleasure or for the things that we want to satisfy our desires, if you will. I like the prospect theory. If you remember him talking about prospect theory, we're more emotionally affected by loss than by gain. So if you give me $50, I don't get as happy as when somebody steals $50 out of my wallet. Like I'm much more upset about that. And I was like, wow, that's actually a really, really true statement in my life. Is, me not getting that role is way more impactful than me getting the role, right? Or getting a similar role or whatever it might be.
Yep.
So I like this new math too. What I have divided by what I want. And then he has a good quote in here by Jose Maria Escriva. It's he who has most needs least. He who has most needs least, which I thought was a really good one.
Yeah, that is really good. So this this whole chapter, like if I'm going to try to summarize this, it is recognizing that going back to the art thing, the canvas, the blank canvas, we have to make something new out of that. Really, it's trying to be content with what we've already got. And the thing that you were talking about, where our resistance to less is even more powerful than our desire for more, that can actually be traced back to, what was it, Thinking Fast and Slow? Is that where you talked about it?
Yeah, I think it was Kahneman, one of Kahneman's studies or books.
Yeah. Okay. All right, you ready to go to chapter 5?
Yep, it's death time, everybody.
It's true. So chapter 5 is Ponder Your Death. And did you talk about memento mori in this section? I can't remember.
I don't think he used the phrase memento mori, but I wrote it down.
Yeah, I know. I was totally thinking about that.
But he didn't write it in his book.
Yeah, so this is a very... I didn't jot down a whole bunch of stuff. Didn't jot down much from this chapter. There were a couple of things. Ponder Your Death is an interesting idea, though, and it's tied to that idea of memento mori. I guess if you wanted to really dive deep into this concept, this is 4,000 Weeks from Oliver Burkeman. And the key idea there is the cosmic insignificance theory.
Yeah.
And that's sort of tied to the thing you were talking about from the last chapter. So the thing to remember here is that regardless of how great a life you live, regardless of how big an impact you make, people will forget you, because people will just move on. And what do you do with that?
Yeah. I'm intrigued to know what you thought about the Disney films being all about death. And I had never really thought about them that way before. And then I was like, oh, they actually are. Like most Disney films, either there's death in the beginning that dramatically changes the character arc of our hero or heroine, right? And then there's some like, I'm going to face death if this thing doesn't happen, or you get something as straight up as Snow White, where they think she's dead, and like it's just wild. I was like, I never thought about that. And then he ties that back into Walt Disney and about how Walt Disney had this crazy fear of death, right? Like he had this experience and he had this crazy fear of death.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense. I've heard different stories about Walt Disney, and I think that what you see in the stuff that was made is a reflection of the character, or the visionary, if you will. And I think it's kind of impossible, and maybe not even a good thing, to try and hide those flaws. But it's also easy to look back, connect the dots, and be like, man, what was this guy's problem? So I'm a little bit reluctant to do that, but I do see the theme. I'm not sure that I would say it still permeates the entire company.
I would agree.
The way that that's framed was a little bit weird to me, because Walt Disney, I don't remember when he died, but it was a long time ago.
It was decades ago.
And I'm sure there's no SOP somewhere that's like, this is how you make a Disney film. Talk about death.
Talk about death, yeah, or incorporate death hard.
So part of that to me is maybe, a little bit of it is Walt Disney's personal inner struggle, but maybe part of it is just the human condition, and that's what makes a good story.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I generally, the thing that is interesting as you kind of unpack that is, well, why do we even feel the need to talk about the fact that he was obsessed with this? Because it's a dark / quote unquote negative thing that we generally want to avoid. I don't know. Maybe we should talk about it more. Yeah. Maybe he was right. I don't know.
So this is where I get into the memento mori. What's interesting to me about this book is how much he ties into like Eastern religion, Eastern mysticism, those type of things through Asian culture and through Indian culture. And I think it's really interesting. So he describes this, a meditation called the Maranasati.
Oh, yeah.
The Maranasati, the mindfulness in death. And that's immediately where I went, oh, memento mori, right? Like it's this mindfulness thinking about death. Now, one of the things that we haven't talked about up until now is he mainly, his point in talking about death here is he's talking about a professional death.
Yeah.
So he gets into the idea of like, we're all going to die a professional death. that like we are going to have to make a decision. We're going to have to make a change. We're not going to be good at the thing we were good at before. And are we good at overcoming this, or can we figure out a way to overcome this? So he says he practices a version of this Maranasati, in which I mindfully envision each of the following states. Now, he gives 9 states. I'm not going to read them.
Yeah, that part was weird.
But like, I was like, that's a really interesting practice, if you will. I think it's a little overkill for me personally,
me too.
but I think it's really interesting to think about that and think about a professional death. So I think about it for me. Okay, if this next year, my time as a faculty member dies, right? I lose the ability to teach. I'm not effective. I'm not able to interact with students well, whatever it might be. How would I do? Like, what would I do?
Yeah.
Would I be okay? Would I make it mentally out of that situation? And I won't answer it right now, but it's like, I want to think through that. I think that's an interesting thing to think through. I get my first action item here, though, Mike. Would you like my first action item out of chapter?
Let's hear it.
We're in chapter 5.
Yeah.
If I had 1 year left in my career and life, how would I structure this month? He talks about he had a friend that got cancer, and he was given a very short time to live, so he then started living like he wanted to live, knowing that, and then thankfully, I mean, the individual lasted a couple more decades, right, before he ended up passing away. And he said that was a turning point, a positive turning point in the person's life. I think that's a really valuable live in the present type of a question.
Yeah.
But it's very actionable. It's like, if I only had 1 year left as a faculty member at CCU, if I only had 1 year left with my family, if I only had one year left with whatever, what would I do this month? And I think the month is cool. Like you could do week as well, but I think the month is cool because it's like, it's a long enough time to actually plan things. And then it's also a short enough time to like, hey, do it. Like, it's that poker. It's the poker that's hitting you in the side going, you need to really do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, the cancer diagnosis, I actually have a note about that I want to discuss, but not till we get to chapter 8.
Okay.
So you ready to go to the next one?
Yes.
All right. So chapter 6 is cultivate your aspen grove. So here he's talking about trees that grow in groves, and he mentions specifically aspens and redwoods. And I had heard this about redwoods, but I had not heard this about aspens, that they have these intertwined root systems that give them strength, and really it's just tying everybody together. I should say the beautiful segue into this from chapter 5, you don't have to face decline alone. That's what I jotted down as one of the things there. And so that leads perfectly into this really about, who are you going to connect with? Humans are naturally interconnected biologically, emotionally, psychologically, intellectually, and spiritual isolation is unnatural. And it's the lonely people who feel like they are the only ones who feel lonely. Basically, that's not what you're not supposed to exist that way. You need other people more than you realize maybe that you need other people.
Can I add something I like that Arthur Brooks does in his writing? So he says, the lonely people are the ones that feel that way. And then he ties it back into what he's written about before, that workaholics and leaders are often the lonely people in the organization. So therefore they're gonna feel this way. But I think that's a demonstration of how consistent his writing is, or how good he is at saying, like, I didn't just write this chapter before just as a throwaway chapter. Like, it ties in. I'm developing a story. I'm developing a narrative as we go through here. So thanks for letting me interrupt.
He ties stuff together so well throughout this entire book. This is one of the more masterfully written books in terms of opening up all these different loops and tying all these threads together to tell a cohesive story. I want to write a book like this. Like, this is pretty inspiring to me. One thing that I really liked about this section, obviously the emphasis is on building relationships. He talks about the 7 big predictors of being happy, one of them being stable long-term relationships. There's a lot of like interesting things I jotted down about marriage, and happiness is not related to falling in love, but staying in love. But the thing that really impacts me out of this is the difference between the real friends and the deal friends.
I thought that was great. I've actually already told people about that.
Have you?
I've used that in conversations with, I was like, this guy's writing about this concept of real friends and deal friends. And there's so many people that your deal friends, And that's okay. Like, I'm totally cool with it.
Yes.
Like, we're deal friends and I'm totally good with that. And then there's the people that are like, no, you're my real friend. Like, if I need you at 2:30 in the morning, I call you and I know you might not be happy, but you'll be there.
Yep.
Like, you'll be there for me.
Yeah, so let's just define those real quick. The real friends are the friends where it doesn't really matter what you actually get from this. You just want to be there for the other person. Deal friends is something that his son mentioned when he had to take a call during one of their weekends when they were going to go fly fishing or something. He's like, Dad, was that a real friend or was that a deal friend? And a deal friend is someone where you have this like mutually beneficial relationship. You both get something out of it, but it is, I don't know, it sounds a little bit negative or superficial, but I like what you said about how it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's okay to have these deal friends, but it's also important to recognize who are your real friends, because those are the ones that really provide the strength that he's talking about in this chapter on the Aspen Grove. He mentions the book How Will You Measure Your Life by Clayton Christensen. Have you read that book?
I've not.
Okay, we should maybe pick that one
Okay.
for Bookworm at some point, because I have mentioned it, I think, several times. I read it as a Gap book a long time ago, and I think you would probably dig it. Number one, just because of the topic. Number two, Clayton Christensen. You know who he is?
I do.
Yeah, he's a Harvard, or was a Harvard business professor.
Yep.
So it's kind of interesting that he wrote that book. It's kind of my worlds colliding there.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's a really good book, and it was written towards the end of his life, and really just thinking about, again, in the title, how are you going to measure your life? What is the legacy really that you want to leave? And the action item that I have from this book actually comes from this chapter, where he's talking about these different friendships, because I feel like that's tied to the legacy that I want to leave. I did a live stream yesterday as we record this. I'll put a link to it in the show notes about the personal retreat stuff. And I also teased the physical personal retreat planner that you were leafing through.
Yep.
So remind me to put those links in the show notes for people. But in the live stream, I actually walked through part of my personal retreat is I look at my ideal future and then also my eulogy. And I read my eulogy online, like the one that I want people to say about me when I'm gone.
That's awesome.
And every time I do it, I'm like, this feels really weird, but it's really powerful. And it's all about the impact that I want to make in the lives of other people. I'm not saying that to be noble or anything. I just feel like that's the more powerful why. Like if you can connect that to, the Second Mountain, David Brooks, and other people, it's more powerful. So I recognize, if I want to have that impact, if that's the legacy I want to leave, I got to make sure that I am taking consistent action towards that. And I can get, like, with my family, I know what's important, like the one-on-ones, the man school stuff, the weekly date nights. And there'll be periods where that stuff is harder than it is most of the time. But for the most part, it's very consistent because I recognize that's really important. The one thing I don't do a great job of, though, is building relationships, building friendships. So that's my action item. Do something to build a friendship.
Fantastic. So you and I are kindred spirits in this situation. Mine isn't necessarily to do something like yours is good. Do something to build a friendship. Mine was research men's networks for friendship. I just want to know what all is out there. I come at this from somebody who is actively engaged in one. So I think I've told you about this. I don't know if I have or not, but there's a group called F3. And it's Fitness, Fellowship, and Faith. And F3, it's disguised as a men's workout, but really it's a men's friendship group. Like, now they'll say it's a men's group to develop, male leaders, male community leaders, but really it's a men's friendship group. Like, that's really what it is it gets guys out and it gets them hanging out with each other. And when they don't have that other thing, and I had never realized before, a lot of the guys in the group are 50 and above. And it's like, are they directly addressing this need? He also describes men's sheds, which I had never heard about.
Oh yeah, those are wild.
Right? Like, and it's basically like a co-working space for men to woodwork and to metalwork and to forge and to just get in there and make things with their hands. And I kept thinking to myself, there's got to be more of these things. Like, or if there aren't more of these things, why aren't there more of these things? Because this is really, I think, an area of need among men, and especially middle-aged men.
Yeah.
It's like, you just, for whatever reason, your kids, your wife, and your job. And if you don't have one of those, it's not like you fill it in with something else. You like maybe a hobby. Like, so it's like I think about, some of the other guys I know, and it's like, okay, they've got no kids, but they got their wife, their job, and then they hunt. And they hunt all the time, right? Like that's the thing they love to do, or fish or golf or whatever it might be. And so I think we as men are just really bad at this. Like we're really, really bad at this. So I like I'm encouraging you. I really like your do something to build real friend, right? Not a deal friend.
Yep. Anything else from that chapter before we move to
the last piece I would have out of this chapter would be the avoiding snares. I thought this was interesting enough to write down that you've got marginal thinking, right? So and plan the month for what matters most, which we talk about all the time. There's the who needs my time and attention. So again, that's a planning thing. And then how do the people I love need, or what do the people I love need? And just these ideas of like, he's directly calling out the things that you're probably going to struggle with, and be proactive and think about those. So I just like the proactive nature of thinking about those early. But that was the last thing I have for this chapter.
Cool. All right. Well, let's move to the next one then, which is the one that I can't pronounce. Start your Vanaprastha.
Nice.
Did I do it right?
You did a great job. I don't know if you did it right, but you did a great job. I feel very good.
So this is the stage of life where we pull back from our professional duties. And this is where you hear the stories about him going to India and meeting with the gurus. And they have the different terms for the different parts of that. The failure to move on from the previous stage, the grihastha, often is because of love for the things of the world. And he talks about the general interest in religion and faith as we age. The interesting thing that I jotted down from this chapter, though, was the idea of the pilgrimages. And he mentioned specifically the Camino de Santiago, the Way of St. James. I know somebody who did that.
I actually do too. A guy this summer did it.
Yeah? Yeah. So there was a guy that I met through my community. His name is Hugo, and he has done this now a couple of times. And I remember I actually had to meet him last year when he came to Macstock, and he was telling me about it. And it was kind of interesting because I've heard Hugo's perspective on this and how it was such a powerful religious experience for him. And then hearing Arthur Brooks talk about it, on the one hand, it's like, oh, I kind of know what that is already, but it also felt like I was hearing a totally different account. Like it was a totally different description. So it was interesting. There wasn't as much overlap in those two descriptions as I thought there would be. And that end result is like, I totally want to do something like this.
Well, what I thought was funny about the way Arthur Brooks described it, because I've heard other people talk about doing it before. And then have you ever watched the movie The Way?
Mm-mm.
So The Way is a movie about walking that pilgrimage.
Okay.
And,
he does mention that in the book. Yeah.
Okay. And I had watched that before, but then one of my colleagues actually did a portion of it, or he did all of it. I can't remember how much he did. But he describes it, when Arthur Brooks describes it, he's like, it is just so amazingly boring. He's like, you get out there and you are just so bored that the only thing you can do is think about meaningful and deep things. And like, I just thought it was so funny the way he described it, because it wasn't like this amazing, beautiful experience from the get-go. It was like, well, you get out there and you start walking, and there's really nothing around. There's just like fields and Roman road, and you just walk. And it's really boring. And it's really, and I was like, wow, you're really selling this, guy. Like you're really telling it. But then he gets to the end where it actually matters. And he's like, and then you get into this spiritual, your head is clear, you're thinking well, you're thinking about deep thoughts. And I thought that's cool. Like I really like that. I wouldn't want to do the Camino de Santiago though. But before I tell you mine, I want to know, which one would you do? Like, what would you do if you were going to do an experience like this?
Oh, I don't know which one. And the Camino de Santiago, I mean, I'm not Catholic, so it probably doesn't hit the same way for me. But I just like the idea of something like that. I have no idea where to even start.
Okay. I can tell you mine right now. It would be the John Muir Trail, and it would be a significant portion of it. I don't think I need to go the whole way from Mexico to Oregon. So the John Muir, if you don't know where it goes, it basically starts in Southern California, like the Mexican border, and then I think it might go the whole way to the Canadian border, but I don't exactly remember. But
Okay.
it'll hike through like the national parks in California, and it's akin to the Appalachian Trail through Appalachia and a little bit of the southeast, but it's just the West Coast version of it. So I think that would be the one that I'd be like, yes, like that's my enlightened getaway. I'm not gonna try to say Griasta experience, right? Like that's
Yeah.
where I guess the Vanaprastha experience.
Yep. All right. So the next chapter, chapter 8, is make your weakness your strength. And I like this one a lot. I think this is a really powerful idea and something that I want to lean into, but I wish more people would.
Okay.
So the idea here is that your weakness, which is your loss or your decline, can actually be a gift to others, which is what I sort of clumsily was trying to explain when I was sharing the mental stuff that I was dealing with later. Like I've come to the point, even before I read this book, but especially after I read this book in this particular chapter, where if me talking about this stuff can help somebody else, it's totally worth it.
Yes.
So I think there's a lot of people out there who want to be the gurus and they want to have all the answers. I like having answers for people when they have questions. I like saving them time so they don't have to make the same mistakes. But also, I think one of the more valuable things that you can do is talk about the places where you've messed up and the mistakes that you've made. And I try to do that. So there were a couple things specifically from this chapter I wanted to talk about. One that really hit me was the Stephen Colbert interview with, I forget who interviewed him. Was it?
I can't remember. Conan? I don't remember who it was.
No, I think it was someone from CNN maybe. But
Anderson Cooper.
Anderson Cooper. That's
yep.
right.
Yeah.
So and Anderson Cooper kind of, it sounds like he started this interview by asking him about this plane accident where Stephen Colbert had lost a couple of family members when he was
his brother and his dad.
Yeah, when he was young, and like that's a pretty heavy way to start an interview. But Stephen Colbert talks about specifically being grateful for the incident, which sounds weird, right? So let me kind of explain that. You don't want to be grateful that, my brother and my dad died, good. Like that's not what he's saying.
No, not at all.
It's kind of tied to this thing about amorphity. I've actually got the Ryan Holiday challenge coin, sitting over there on my desk. Love the thing. So the idea that Stephen Colbert talks about is love the thing you most wish had not happened. And really what it is kind of like, in my opinion, sort of redeeming that experience, redeeming that time. And the thing that really crystallizes this for me is Rachel talking about her experience forming her life theme, because she explains it really well in the videos in the community. I'm going to probably butcher it, but basically her dad died in a car accident when she was young. I think she was 6. And she recognizes that was a very impactful moment. It wasn't obviously a good moment, a happy moment. She lost her dad. She would prefer that her dad not have died in the car accident. But there's no denying the impact that had on her. And then she's kind of leaned into the last several years of owning that experience and talking about it freely so that it can help other people who are dealing with that sort of grief. And so she's tied that to her life theme and made it her mission to basically like help people in that situation. So that's kind of what that looks like. And I think that's really cool. It's really noble. And then the other piece of this is that cancer diagnosis. This is where that came in for me, because my dad was diagnosed with cancer about a year ago. He's doing pretty good, but he would be the first one to tell you that, and he's told me this too in different ways. I don't want to put words in his mouth because I'm going to mess it up, but basically he would say that the perspective change anyways that has come from dealing with this has been a gift, not the cancer itself. Obviously you don't want to have cancer, but he's a very different person now, and his perspective has completely changed because of that event that triggered that. And so I guess, the best version is to get that perspective change without having to go through that thing. But maybe that's not even possible. Maybe you do have to go through that stuff in order to get to the other side. So I don't know. This chapter I feel like is probably the most important one to me.
Yeah.
Like it's the hardest one.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But then also I think it has the potential to make the greatest impact.
See, and he uses the example of Paul in the Bible to do this,
Yep.
and he refers to Paul. I loved every second of the way he refers to Paul as the anti-stoic. I don't like stoicism. I
Yeah,
don't
I
like it. Like
struggle with that
it's
too.
always rubbed me the wrong way. Like I don't like it. I don't like, when I read about it, when people talk about it, I just don't like it. Like I don't like the philosophy. And he calls me anti-stoic, so like he had me there. But then when he describes talking about your weaknesses as a way to reach out to other people, just like you described, as a way to support other people, as a way to help other people. There's a big difference between talking about them in a complaining fashion or in a whining fashion. And that's not the example that he gives here. He gives the example of like, I'm talking about these to hopefully lift you up, to
Right.
bring something valuable to you. And then he ends it out with honesty and humility bring relaxation. So again, we talked about before about how he ties everything together so well. If you're this success addict, if you're this person who is declining and you're freaking out and you're not peaceful, you're not relaxed about where you are in life because of the curves and where you are, and you're trying to live on this first curve and you're not willing to move over, having honesty and humility about your weaknesses, sharing that in relationship with other people, it's makes sense, and it seems reasonable that you would be like you'd get relaxation and some peace out of that. Like I just love the way he ties stuff together. So I thought chapter 8 was great. I actually don't have as many notes in chapter 8, probably because I was so into the chapter. I like when I'm into the chapter, I kind of just read and then I go, oh man, what just happened? Like I didn't write anything down about this chapter.
Yeah, that does happen. I don't have a ton here, but I had 2 of those little talking head emojis. So,
Yeah.
all right, ready to move on to the last official chapter?
Last official chapter.
All right, so the last official chapter is chapter 9, which is cast into the falling tide. Now, I am not a fisherman,
Me either.
so this metaphor does nothing for me.
Yeah.
But he does talk about a couple different things here, which I think are kind of cool. So liminality is the time between, he defines as the time between work roles, organizations, career paths, and relationship stages. And this is interesting to me because with just the place where stuff is with the business, I have been doing my due diligence and like brushing up the resume and sending out some job applications. And it's quickly become evident to me that like if you have any sort of gaps, like that's a huge red flag for people.
Yeah.
So I'm figuring out, how do I actually do that? So that he's basically saying that doesn't have to necessarily be a bad thing. And I think that's actually pretty cool. He talks about a book by Bruce Feiler, Life is in the Transitions. I totally want to take a look at this.
Okay.
I have a different Bruce Feiler book on my bookshelf. I think it's by the same guy, The Secrets of Happy Families. He was basically talking about sprint planning for families.
Interesting.
Yeah. He originally gave a TED talk on it, which is how it came on my radar. But the idea behind casting into the falling tide anyways is he was talking about the story when he's fishing on the ocean. He's casting and somebody's watching him and telling him, you don't want to fish right now because there's not going to be any fish there. As the tide is coming in, that's when you think the fish would be there, but really you have to cast when the tide is going out.
Mm-hmm.
When the window is closing, basically, that's when you actually catch the fish. So it's an effective way to end the message of the book. He talks about transitions being inevitable, but crisis does not have to be inevitable. Suffering during transitions isn't always bad. It can create meaning in life that imposes a sense of stability in future transitions. So maybe, a more fatigue, going back to the Ryan Holiday thing, it literally means like to love whatever happens.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I struggle with that a little bit because I don't want to, love all the bad things that happen, but I get the idea is like, this is just part of the process. Yeah. So let's glean what we can out of it. And the goal, he says, is seeking a life that is a balance of enjoyable and meaningful. He talks about hedonia, which is feeling good, and eudaimonia, which is living a purpose-filled life. So I like how he frames this about the balance there being an interesting life. So yeah, that's a new goal for me.
Yeah.
Live an interesting life. No action item associated with that, because you'd have to follow me around for the next 40 years before you can mark that one off. But
well, you keep making stuff for the internet. We're following you, right? Keep making
okay.
stuff. I think what we talk about, that midlife crisis. I said we'd get to it later in the book. He talks about it here directly, and he basically says it's not really a midlife crisis. It doesn't have to be anyhow. It doesn't have to be a midlife crisis. It's a career reset. So I think if I have any rub with this book, it's how much it's focused on career. I understand why he does it, but it's like it's a career reset. And I think this would have been more meaningful if it would have been a life reset, or like it's a different phase of life. It's a, instead of just career. But that's a very minor hit for me. But I like that he starts to use the language of reset and not crisis, because I think it changes the way you think about it. It's not the end of the world. The sky is not falling. Hey, let's figure out what the next step is. And then this idea of liminality, it's like, embrace this transition process and reset and figure out what you're going to go with. I mean, I hope that like people and myself don't ever have to go through this. Like I would love to just be like, oh, smooth sailing, everything's fine, or it's more natural. You hear about people that kind of go through this and it was like, well, this next opportunity arose, so I just went and seized that opportunity. And it's like, well, good for you. Right? Like, I'm so glad that next opportunity just like rose up out of the ground and found you. But then he talks about this modern elder academy. And I thought this was just an interesting concept. I don't know if I loved every aspect of the modern elder academy, particularly the four steps in the academy, but I really like the 4 questions. What activities will you keep? And this is very personal retreaty. Like that's the way I thought of it. What activities will you keep? What activities will you evolve to do differently? What activities will you let go of? And what new activities will you learn? Right. So again, it's very, very personal retreat. Like I've heard you talk about this before.
What will I start doing, stop doing, keep doing?
Exactly. Right. Like I've heard you talk about this in many different ways before. And I like that way of thinking. And it's because it normalizes change, which I think is a really hard thing for people to wrestle with.
Yep.
There's this liminal period. We're in the middle of it. We don't know what the future is going to look like. That's okay. Normalize the change process and be okay with that. I really thought that was a good, way to package the end of his argument and the end of the thesis he was trying to make.
What did you think about he mentions that one of the biggest mistakes people make in their careers is to treat work primarily as a means to an end? I feel like that's kind of at the root of the slight, maybe little bit of criticism that you mentioned there about the focus on the career. I think what he's trying to say with that statement is really work should not be, I want to do all these things and achieve all these things, but I am trying to live out my purpose in a professional way, right?
Yeah, I it's that whole live to work to live kind of thing. Like that's the short way of describing kind of what he unpacks in more detail. I mean, I think I don't remember how he said it. So tell me how he said it again. Is he says
one of the biggest mistakes people make in their careers is to treat work primarily as a means to an end.
Yeah. See, and I can't even say that if you treat work like a means to an end, that's a bad thing. Like if you're okay with that and you're doing that and it's like, nope, my purpose is not in my career. And this is where I like, so you described it really well. I don't think I'd have put this together on my own. You described it really well. I think I disagree with him here. I think if you replaced work or career with that thing you think is most important, it might be your work and your career. And for most people, I think it is work and career, especially men, right? It's your work and your career. But like, let's say it's something else. I mean, I don't even know what to say. Like I'm the best club softball player in my town. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's what I like. I mean, that's bread and butter. Like, so do I work all day just to go play softball at night? Absolutely. Right. And that's totally fine. Like go work all day to play softball at night and to buy new bats and equipment and gear. But when you stop being able to play softball well, acknowledge that that's a natural part of life, and transition to the older person league or transition to pickleball or like make that transition. And I think So I think what he's describing here can be applied in a lot more context than he does. Again, I don't think it's a big knock on the book, but I do think it's one of the things that I think could be broadened out as he writes.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Conclusion. This one is pretty short. It's called 7 Words to Remember.
I'm going to cut you off. Had you heard the 7 words prior to reading this book? Because you've said this to me. I know you've said this to me. I'm almost positive you have. I don't want to give away the 7 words until you're ready.
Yeah. So the first 4, yes. I feel like I've heard those somewhere else.
Okay.
But not all 7.
Okay.
So the 7 words are: use things, love people, worship the divine.
Yeah. I swear you've said this to me before.
Like I said, the first part of this I feel like I've heard somewhere before,
Okay.
and I can't place where I've initially heard that.
Maybe we read it somewhere else in a different book or something.
Yeah, but it kind of gets back to the whole definition of productivity.
Mm-hmm.
Where productivity is not cranking widgets. And so Chris Bailey in the Productivity Project mentioned that people are the reason for productivity. It's kind of a different approach there. So yeah, I don't know. I can't trace this specific phrase, but I've heard it before, and it definitely has resonated with me before. So very effective way to wrap up the book.
I agree completely. I think it's incredibly. He directly addresses the other thing. He directly addresses is self-worship, and I don't mean it in like this overly dramatic way, but it's this worshiping money, power, idols, whatever it might be, as a way to satisfy ourselves, and we need to really push that away. Which I just really thought he ended it well. I thought the book wrapped up well.
Agreed. All right, so action items. I just have one. My one action item here is to do something to build a friendship. I have a feeling that this will turn into some sort of system. In fact, I was talking to Jesse J. Anderson at Craft and Commerce. Do you know who Jesse J. Anderson is?
You've described Jesse.
He is the person behind Extra Focus. So the ADHD guy, basically. There's lots of people out there who make really great content for neurodivergent folks, but that one is pretty good in my opinion. And he was showing me, he's shared publicly on social media this idea, so I'm not letting the cat out of the bag. But he was showing me a beta version of this app that he was developing because, in his words, I'm a really terrible friend.
Okay.
He's like, I forget to follow up with people and check in with people. So it's basically like a contact style app where it pulls in different notes from things. So you have it all in one place, but then also you can set these different reminders associated with the person's account to follow up and connect with them at different periods, which I think is a really cool idea and really exactly what I need.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I don't know if he ever comes out with that app in the near future, I'll probably pick that up, write about it, whatever. But even if he doesn't, I need to first of all do something and then figure out how to do it consistently, just because that's what I do. I make systems out of things.
Nice. All right. So I had 2. The first one I had was, if I had 1 year left in my career and life, how would I structure this month? I think it'd be really interesting to think about that, especially as we go into the new semester, because Mike, you've done this with me a couple different times now. My life is going to get absolutely insane here in about a week, and it's going to be insane it's going to be like really insane for about a month, and then it'll level off again. And then towards the end of the semester, it's going to get insane again. So I want to think about, like, in this insane period, I don't want to lose focus on what I should be focused on. So I think this will be a good one for me to do right now. The second one was just research what are all the men's friendship groups that exist. I mean, there's got to be a ton of them, and let's go look at what they are and figure out, are they working? Aren't they working? Do I resonate with what they're in? I'm not necessarily looking to join anything. Yeah. I just want to know what's out there and what exists.
Sure. All right. Style and rating. So I guess a little bit of a backstory here that maybe I should have shared at the beginning. I was given this book for Christmas by my brother maybe a year and a half ago. Christmas. Yeah, I guess it'd be a year and a half ago. And I could tell when he gave it to me, he was a little bit nervous to do it. Like he thought that I would really enjoy the book, but it's really a book about how like, hey, you're getting older,
Yeah,
so how
yeah,
are you going to
yeah.
deal with it?
Yep.
And like I said, I had 2 copies of this. I had bought it previously because it just showed up on the list for me and things like that. But I think honestly, because of the subject matter, maybe I just was like, I don't want to read about that right now.
Okay. Okay.
So I think I have been subconsciously resisting this book for a while, and I think that's probably pretty natural. If you feel like you probably should read this but don't want to, you totally should.
You should definitely read it.
Yeah, I don't think it's you were talking a little bit about the men's stuff and things like that. I don't think it's just applicable to guys.
No way.
This is for anybody who is going to or has or is about to transition from one stage of life to the next. Like, I think this is a book that everybody should read. Maybe when you read it is important. If you're just getting out of college, you probably don't need to worry about this one for a little bit. But I think this is a really important book. I think it's really, really good. I think Arthur Brooks is an incredible writer. We talked a little bit about all the open loops and all the threads that he weaves together in the narrative towards the end. The conclusion, 7 words to remember. Brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Great way to just put the exclamation point on this whole idea. There's so many things in here where he added additional context for me to ideas that I had heard somewhere else. But every time he described something, I didn't a single time feel like, well, I've heard this before. It always felt fresh. It always felt new. And every single word that he used felt purposeful. His writing style is very entertaining, a little bit self-deprecating. And the other thing that's really interesting to me about this, because a lot of nonfiction books that we read tend to kind of fall into a rhythm. His writing style is extremely varied. A lot of longer sentences, then a lot of shorter sentences. Like, he's got a very good cadence to how he writes. Mm-hmm. And this is a really good one. I'm going to give this 5 stars. I think this one belongs on everybody's bookshelf.
Yeah, this is easily a 5-star book. I would agree completely with you, Mike. Everything from the writing style to the stories that were relevant to the way he threaded things together. I thought he brought up, it was like a well-researched book, not an overly researched book though, which is fun. Like, it's a fun needle to thread, because some of those ones you just get so bombarded by all the research. But this one was like, okay, I've done my homework and I'm going to tell you the story, but I'm not going to like pummel you over the head with too much of the background or too much of the research. I think, like you said, if you're in high school or just coming out of college, like, get it, put it on the shelf and come back to it in 10 years. Like, you don't really need it right now necessarily. But even there, he talks about his story with playing the violin and how no matter how much he practiced, no matter what he did, what tutors he worked with, no matter what he did, he was just getting worse. And there was no way for him to get better. And he was only like 20, like in his mid-20s or something like that.
Yep.
So, again, there's exceptions to everything. But it's like, I think for most people, picking this up in the mid-30s, I think would be a really, really healthy way to do it. I also think that if you're on the older side of life, right, the more seasoned, experienced side of life, picking this up to help people that you might mentor who are going through their late 30s, early 40s, 50s, I think it'd be a huge help for you to think through some of these ideas as you help other people. So I could not recommend this book more. I think this is one that people will benefit from reading, and I also think it's an enjoyable read. I don't think it's one of those ones that's a slog to get through. So without a doubt, it's a 5-star book for me.
Awesome. So we've got a golden book.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's put From Strength to Strength on the shelf. What's next, Cory?
So the next book we're going to talk about is called The Science of Scaling by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And this book is brand new. It just came out July 29th, 2025. So it's exciting to get to look at another one of Benjamin Hardy's books. He has a co-author on this one, Blake Erickson. I don't know a lot about Blake Erickson, but we'll find out more. Oh, he is they're the co-founders of Scaling.com.
Oh,
right?
okay. Makes sense.
Yeah. So they're into this. Mike, I think you mentioned last episode when I offered this book that it seems like Benjamin Hardy's making a pivot or making a little bit of a
Yeah,
change
yeah, from Dan Sullivan.
yeah,
Yeah.
in what he's doing. So it's going to be interesting to see what this book's all about. And basically this is about growing a business bigger and faster than you think you can. And I think it'll just be an interesting book to read as, you know, Mike thinks about his creative business, as I think about like the stuff I'm doing, just dabbling around on the side. But I'm also thinking about scaling the engineering program at CCU. So it's like, I think it's going to be a very relevant book, although it's going to be specific to scaling, you know, a business or scaling
Yeah.
an entity. So that's our next one. After that, Mike, what do you have?
Yeah, so back in the day, I read a book that pretty much changed my life, and that was Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy.
Okay.
I have talked about it several times on the Bookworm podcast. We've never read it because it's an older book. However, the fourth edition was just released. So I feel like we have to cover this one. Eat That Frog, when I read it, was like 21 productivity tips. This one says it's got 25% new material. So I don't know if that means the tips changed or if it's now.
Still says 21.
Okay.
And so I don't think they've added more, but it's got 25% new material.
Yeah. So this one will be interesting because my thoughts on and my perspective, I guess, on productivity has changed quite a bit in the last several years. So I'm kind of curious to see if I still think that this one is as great as it is in my head. But it should be a pretty easy read.
And this is the first time I've read it, so it'll be fun for you as an experienced reader of this one to talk to me about somebody who's reading it for the first time.
All right. You got any gap books, Cory?
You know, I don't have gap books, and part of that is because we are starting a new semester in a week or two, and I'm intentionally not taking on a gap book right now. So
that is fair.
No, the answer is no gap books. Mike, what about you?
I have one I'm going to try to read through, but I don't know that I'll get through it. And that is Write Useful Books by Rob Fitzpatrick. You know, I mentioned that reading this by Arthur Brooks makes me inspired to to write a book of my own. That's kind of one of those projects that bubbles up to the surface every once in a while. And I have this book. I've never made it all the way through it. So yeah, I'm going to try to crank through that one.
Wonderful. If you all are interested in hearing me talk about my experiences in Wisconsin, which I'm there right now, I'm actually sitting two feet away from Mike. You can listen to the Pro Show. The Pro Show is a longer ad-free show. You get the bootleg. It's released right after we record. It's typically about a week or two early. There's usually a live stream. We didn't do the live stream today just because of the being in person and trying to figure out the logistics of film and video and live streaming that. So if you're a Pro Show member, sorry, we'll get back to the live stream here on the next recording. But you also get a wallpaper. It's $7 a month. It's at patreon.com/bookwormfm. And we really appreciate those who subscribe, and we really appreciate anybody else who's willing to join and support the show.
Absolutely. And if you want to recommend a book for us to read, you can do so. There'll be a link in the show notes where you can do that. Otherwise, pick up The Science of Scaling, and we will talk to you all in a couple of weeks.